about the major decisions the IOC Executive Board took today. We received, first of all, a report from Tokyo 2020, the organizing committee, about their COVID countermeasures, which they are proposing based on an interim report of their tripartite task force. We have also been updated on the latest budget developments, and the Executive Board was welcoming them, of course, because with this we have clarity now, even more clarity for the organization of the Games, as well as with regard to the safety and security of the athletes, as well as with regard to the budget of the Games. As part of these COVID countermeasures, the IOC has elaborated together with Tokyo 2020 and with all the other stakeholders, including, of course, the Athletes Commission, joint guidelines which should serve all the 206 national Olympic committees as a framework for the period of their stay in the Olympic Village. We think that this is absolutely necessary because we need to reduce and to minimize the number of residents in the Olympic Village, to minimize the risk of COVID exposure. At the same time, we want to maintain the athletes' experience. We want to have it balanced with the considerations about the athletic performance, and also with the attendance at, in particular, the opening ceremonies. Therefore, the guideline says that the NOCs should adapt their arrival and departure policies to ensure that athletes can arrive at the Olympic Village 5 days prior to the start of their competition and depart a maximum of 2 days after their completion of competition. This, of course, also applies to the sport-specific officials per NOC, not only to the athletes. And their exceptions to this will be considered subject to certain sport-specific criteria, so to always well balance these COVID countermeasures with the athletes' experience. And therefore, it was very important, to have there the approval of the Athletes Commission for these guidelines. And in this, we will, of course, continue to further develop the COVID countermeasures, always taking into account the latest developments in testing or vaccination, which at this moment in time come almost by the day. We also had to discuss the situation of the NOC of Belarus again. There, as you may remember, the IOC Executive Board decided in our last meeting on the 25th of November to start a formal procedure vis-à-vis the NOC of Belarus. And I can inform you that in view of the allegations and elements received by the IOC and the responses provided by the NOC of Belarus, the IOC has come to the conclusion that it appears that the current leadership of the NOC of Belarus has not appropriately protected the Belarusian athletes from political discrimination within the NOC, and I stress within the NOC, their member federations, or the sports movement. This is contrary to the fundamental principles of the Olympic Charter, and therefore seriously affects the reputation of the Olympic movement. Therefore, the IOC decided to take the following provisional measures. First, to exclude the currently elected members of the Executive Board of the NOC of Belarus from all IOC events and activities, including the Olympic Games. This includes in particular Mr. Alexander Lukashenko in his capacity as NOC president and legal representative of the NOC, Mr. Viktor Lukashenko in his capacity as NOC first vice president and the person responsible for the NOC's operations and activities on a daily basis, and Mr. Dmitry Baskov in his capacity as an NOC Executive Board member and in view of the specific allegations raised against him. This provision is not applicable to Mrs. Tatiana Trotskokovskaya, as she is an ex officio athletes representative on the Executive Board. Second, to suspend all financial payments to the NOC of Belarus, with the exceptions of payments related to the preparations of the Belarusian athletes for and their participation in the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 and the Olympic Winter Games Beijing 2022. All Olympic scholarships for Belarusian athletes will now be paid directly to the athletes and no longer through the NOC. Third, to request the relevant international federations to make sure that all eligible Belarusian athletes can take part in qualification events for the upcoming Olympic Games without any political discrimination. Fourth, to suspend any discussions with the NOC of Belarus regarding the hosting of future IOC events. Fifth, to request all constituents of the Olympic movement to respect these measures in the interest of protecting Belarusian athletes' rights and the reputation of the Olympic movement. The IOC Executive Board will continue to monitor the situation and reserves the right to consider any further action or to remove any of these provisional measures depending on the evolution of the situation. Secondly, we have also had to take decisions, and we're in the position to take decisions concerning the Olympic Games Paris 2024. There we have had a proposal from the Program Commission of the IOC, for which the IOC Executive Board had previously established the following four principles. To reduce the overall athlete quota to 10,500, including for all new sports. To achieve gender equal participation across the Olympic Games at event and discipline level wherever possible. To prioritize new events that accommodate athletes within the sport's existing quota allocation, and new events to accept them only if there are existing venues. In order to achieve these principles, the Program Commission and the Executive Board had to review the requests of the respective Olympic international federations, which presented 41 additional events on top of the already existing program. This would have led to the result that the number of medal events would have increased to 380 compared to 339 in Tokyo. The IOC Executive Board, following again the proposal of the Program Commission, has therefore not accepted any of these 41 events, but in the contrary, we have achieved to decrease the number of medal events from 339 to 329. On top, no new venues are needed. We have also achieved to reduce the overall athlete quota to exactly 10,500. These are about 600 athletes less than we expect for Tokyo 2020. It will also lead to a reduction in the number of officials, so that the overall reduction will be about 1,000. We will see exactly 50% male and female participation, following on from the gender equality already achieved for Tokyo 2020, which will have about 49% female participation. But with Paris, we are doing the last step to full gender equality with 50% male and 50% female athletes participating. And this is for the first time in Olympic history that we will reach this full gender equality. We will see growth of mixed gender events, which we have promoted in order to get to the full gender equality. We will see this increase from 18 in Tokyo to 22 in Paris. Athletics, boxing and cycling will reach full gender equality for the first time ever. The EB at the same time confirmed for new sports, their skateboarding, sport climbing, surfing and breaking as additional sports following the proposal of the Paris 2024 organizing committee. But all of these four, again, within the quota of the 10,500 athletes I mentioned. Additionally, the urban sport concept has been expanded, showcasing youth-focused events that are inclusive, engaging, and can be practiced outside conventional sports arenas. With this program for the Olympic Games Paris 2024, we want to make the Olympic Games fit for the post-coronavirus world. And there, our director for sports, Mr. Kit McConnell, can give you some more details about this new and fascinating programs of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Kit?
Thank you very much, President, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's really great to join you for another really historic step forward for the development of the Olympic program, as the President just outlined, in regard to the event program and the athlete quotas, which were finalized today for the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Maybe I could start by just saying these are really a strong reflection of the achievements around Olympic Agenda 2020. When we look at the continued innovation of the OCOG proposals, which came in through Olympic Agenda 2020, the expansion of the youth-focused and urban elements of the program as we go forward to Tokyo, the gender equality reached for the very first time with 50% female participation, getting all of the athlete numbers down to 10,500, including those in the 4 additional sports, using existing venues in every case with these athletes and the events, and overall further reducing the cost and complexity of hosting the Olympic Games. All of this builds on the program we have in place for what will be an incredible Olympic Games in Tokyo next year, which clearly had the focus on being more youth, more urban, more women. And before I go into detail, I really would like to thank the work of the Olympic Program Commission, Paris 2024, for the great teamwork in finalizing this program. And most importantly, the international federations for the really open discussions we have had over not just recent months, but throughout the whole of this year. In terms of the quotas, as the president noted, the objective was very clear, and that was to get the overall number of athletes down to 10,500. This was established almost 2 years ago as a principle and reiterated in the very first steps towards Paris. The Olympic Program Commission established some very clear ways of achieving this. First of all, it highlighted the need to be clear and consistent across all of the sports, and therefore put in place a principle that there would be no increase in athlete quota across any of the 28 sports from Tokyo 2020. And in fact, in making the necessary reductions in athlete quota, and we had to reduce the Olympic sports, the 28 sports, by 350, that athlete quota reduction should be proportionate and based on some very clear considerations. Number one, the existing quota, obviously, within the sport and the disciplines. Secondly, the reductions that had already been made from Rio 2016 to Tokyo 2020. Thirdly, the flexibility that we find in larger quota individual sports versus the team sports, where it is harder to adjust the quota. And finally, the governance principles that the executive board had previously highlighted around both boxing and weightlifting. And you'll see in the press release, this is the way in which that quota reduction was found across 11 sports. As the president highlighted, this has an impact not only on the athlete numbers, but the official numbers, because the numbers of team officials is a direct result of athlete numbers. And we've achieved that full 50% gender equality for female participation and gender equality in 28 out of 32 sports. On the quota side, I'd just like to highlight two important sport changes. The first one is in regard to weightlifting. And here, the Olympic Program Commission received a very clear advice from the IOC Executive Board to take into account the very strong ongoing concerns regarding both governance and anti-doping in the sport. As a result, the highest ratio or percentage reduction across any sport was made in weightlifting. In Rio 2016, the quota for weightlifting was 260. That was reduced already in Tokyo to 196. And for Paris 2024, the quota will be 120. That is a further reduction of 76 athletes from the quota in place in Tokyo, and therefore less than half of the overall athlete quota in Paris than weightlifting had in Rio. Equally, in terms of events and in line with the athlete reduction, there was also a reduction in events in the sport of weightlifting, a reduction of 2 men and 2 women's weight categories, going down from 7 to 5 in each, and therefore a total reduction from 14 to 10 weight categories in weightlifting. So down to 120 athletes, a reduction of 76, and a reduction of 4 events, 2 men, 2 women. To be clear, this does not confirm the place of weightlifting in the program in Paris, and the IOC Executive Board continues to reserve the right to further review the place of weightlifting in Paris as things move forward. The weight categories themselves will be finalized at the end of 2021 following a review of Tokyo. The second sport to highlight is boxing, and here we had the second highest ratio reduction. It was reduced by 34 athletes from 286 to 252. Boxing will be gender equal for the first time in its Olympic history as well, and there was a step taken towards greater gender equality on the event side. You'll remember in both London and Rio, there were 10 men and 3 women's events. In Tokyo, this was increased to 8 men and 5 women, keeping the total of 13. For Paris, the overall total of 13 events will be retained, but this will be 7 men and 6 women, and with full gender equality between men and women in terms of athletes. And here, this again is a reflection of the ongoing concerns regarding AIBA and our own commitments to protect the athletes while addressing the governance issues. On the event side, the president noted the requests for 41 additional events. In terms of how to review the events, the Olympic Program Commission again looked at how to address the cost and complexity while allowing progression and innovation within the overall numbers of events. Here, the Olympic Program Commission put in place some additional principles and framework to allow this event review to take place. The first one was not to increase the overall numbers from Tokyo, and as the President highlighted, in fact, those overall event numbers have come down from 339 to 329. Secondly, to apply this fairly, there would be no increase in the number of events across any of the 28 sports on the program from Tokyo 2020 to Paris 2024. And this allows us to apply that principle with fairness and consistency. And as the President said, only consider changes in the event program where it is a swap within existing event numbers and without increasing cost and complexity. I'd like to highlight a couple of sports in this regard that we do note in the press release also. Firstly, in regard to athletics, there was a very strong case put forward for cross country, the mixed relay, but this required additional athletes. You can imagine the positive elements around this. There was a value that was seen by the Program Commission in terms of its connection with community sport, social running, a very classic form of the sport and hugely accessible and popular. But as we look at the overall approach to Paris, it was very hard to make this within both the event numbers and to introduce this while reducing the cost and complexity by adding a new discipline, even within an existing venue, and therefore looking at the real value add potential for cross-country. There is a view to further consider this as we look forward, particularly around Los Angeles, where there's a very strong popularity, obviously, in college and high school sport. On the race walk program, again, the Olympic Program Commission looked at the history of reviewing the race walk program, and this was in fact highlighted when the Tokyo program was set to further review the race walk program already for Paris. We know World Athletics itself has undergone several reviews of the race walk program in terms of formats, distances, the gender equality in the sport, the credibility and use of technology, and the overall demands in regard to the hosting of the event, both in the Olympic Games and outside. As a result, and looking at the need to control the event numbers, the men's 50K race walk has been removed from the Olympic program. The two 20K events in men and women are retained, and the opportunity is there to add a third event of a mixed gender type. So the men's 50K race walk is out because the request was there to add a further long race walking event on the women's side. We couldn't increase the numbers of events, and therefore we had to review how to reach gender equality. So kept the two 20K race walks and replace the men's 50K race walk with the opportunity to have a mixed gender event in athletics. This could, of course, be a race walk event, which would give a third race walk event and, in fact, a second medal opportunity for the women. So that review will take place with World Athletics through to May 2021. In sailing, there were swaps in a couple of events. The 470s in both men and women came out and were replaced by a mixed 470 and a mixed kiteboarding. This builds on the successful inclusion of the kiteboards in the Youth Olympic Games Buenos Aires 2018. So both of these were approved as changes within the existing event numbers. There was also the request to swap the fins for the offshore event. There was some attraction obviously noted around this in terms of the spectacular nature of the event, the links with virtual sport and online participation, but equally some very clear challenges in terms of securing the athlete's safety on a field of play that extends over hundreds of kilometers, and the cost and complexity both of securing that field of play and the impact on NOCs and national federations at a local level. And therefore, the decision was taken to postpone a decision on the offshore event, further review this, and work with World Sailing and Paris 2024 to finalize the considerations on this event ahead of May 2021, including any potential alternatives to the offshore event. The last two to highlight, firstly in regard to canoe, the proposal to introduce the two extreme slalom events were made right back in February of this year by the International Canoe Federation, and we've worked with them since then to understand the value add that these events would bring and equally how they would be managed in the Olympic program. There was a quota reduction of 12 athletes in the sport of canoe, so this had to be found across the events. The ICF board made two very clear decisions over the last couple of weeks. Firstly, to swap two sprint events to allow space for the extreme slalom events to be brought in, and secondly, to finalize the canoe sprint program. In this regard, working with the Canoe Federation, we reviewed the the principle of putting athletes first and making sure that the athletes do have a pathway towards the games, even with the event program adaptations. And here we could note, for example, that with the removal of the K1 200 for the women, all of the top 10 athletes currently in the ICF rankings equally also compete in events that stay on the Olympic program, including the 500-meter event. So there's still a pathway there for the majority of the leading athletes in that event that has been removed from by the ICF board in the program for Paris to make way for the introduction of those extreme slalom events. Equally on the men's side, there are pathways there for a number of the NOCs which compete in the new events that have replaced the events that have been removed by the ICF board. So we know it's not easy for any changes in the program, but equally we've worked with the federation to make sure that there are pathways there for the national federations and the NOCs. And then finally, President, in regard to rowing, there was a very strong proposal put forward by World Rowing in regard to the new discipline of coastal rowing. Again, a lot of interest around this being accessible around the world for smaller countries, a very robust form that obviously has a connection with coastlines around the world. We looked at this very closely, but very challenging to bring in. It would have had to take place at the sailing marina in Marseille, and therefore the cost and complexity was a challenge, but very strong support for looking at this proposal moving forward as put forward by World Rowing to swap the lightweights for coastal rowing. Not possible this time around because of those principles around cost and complexity, but very strong support for World Rowing. Continue to review this and look at it for future games. So, President, this highlights some of the key elements of consideration and also the implementation on a sport-specific basis, and all of the information is further outlined in the press release and the supporting documentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kit. And just to remind you, a very comprehensive resume, but all that will be appearing on our website in the form of a press release on the Paris Sports Programme after this press conference. There'll also be the EB decision on Belarus, which will be there in the full detail. So just to remind you, we have had 10 of these video conferences, but if you want to ask a question, click on the hand icon, click on the send request, and once the moderator has approved your request, you can click on the continue button. So let's get straight down to questions, and hopefully we're going to start with Ashish Sharma from Sport Intern. Ashish.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we see you also.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to ask you a question with regards to sort of changes that are taking place in the Tokyo bid. We've seen a lot of plans in terms of reducing down the scale of preparation for the Olympics. But now that we are so close to having a vaccine being distributed internationally across the world, is that changing the playing field a little bit from your point of view? And I'm thinking more specifically with regards to the admission of fans at the Olympics next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, what has been presented there by Tokyo is an interim report, and of course all future developments will be taken into account. Tokyo has also informed us that with regard to the spectators, they will particularly look into this situation for foreign spectators, but also for domestic spectators, and that they will take a decision then in spring next year with regard to international spectators and the number of spectators in the stadia and arenas. So this is always work in progress, and we of course appreciate every new development with regard to testing and vaccines.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Reuters, Carlos Groman. Carlos?
Yes, good afternoon. I hope you can see me and hear me.
Not seeing you yet. Now, yes.
Yes.
Now you're on.
Good.
You have very good lighting in there. You have very good lighting in your office there, or in your home office.
Yes. It's a storage room. Let's call it a storage room, not an office. It's a temporary office. I have a question regarding Tokyo and the games next year, and the changes that you're making to the arrival and the departure the question marks that still remain regarding traveling fans. How do you feel that they will or may affect the overall atmosphere of the games, which is essentially based on the fact that the whole world comes together in one place?
No, we will have the whole world coming together at one place, and these are the 206, the athletes from the 206 national Olympic committees and the IOC refugee Olympic team. And they will live together in the Olympic Village, unfortunately, this time, maybe for a shorter period of time than usually. But these guidelines are making sure that nevertheless they can experience the Olympic spirit in the Olympic Village. With regard to spectators, again, it's too early to tell which situation we may face and which decision have to be taken, because Tokyo 2020 and the Japanese government, as well as the Tokyo Metropolitan Government and the IOC, we want to carefully evaluate which assistance, which help their new testing methods or then a vaccination could offer us. This is why this decision has not been taken yet, in order to ensure the most of the Olympic spirit as we can offer during this very difficult period of time for all of us.
Thank you, Carlos. Let's go to Associated Press and Graham Dunbar. Graham, your question, please.
Hello. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
A very brief question, because specifically on Belarus, will you now expect Ice Hockey Federation to take hosting rights from next year's World Championships from Belarus? But also on AIBA, the election this week, are AIBA well aware of your details, of your feelings about certain candidates, which you've said after the board meeting 2 weeks ago that you had concerns with some of them? Are AIBA and its voters well aware of your position on this? Could you share any of your concerns with us? And also, given that we may be only days away from a verdict from the Court of Arbitration for Sport on a bigger case involving Rusada, is it appropriate for a Russian candidate to be so prominent to potentially win an election at this time?
This was your one short question.
I tried to make it count.
With regard to AIBA, AIBA is well aware of the concerns. There has also been a conversation between our ethics and compliance officer and the relevant body within AIBA. They know the report of the working group having been presented by Mr. Lalovic already some time ago. They know about the number of decisions or resolutions we had to pass in the IOC executive board. With regard to Belarus, we have been informed by the International Ice Hockey Federation that they have initiated a procedure against their board member, against the president of the National Ice Hockey Federation, who is at the same time a board member of the NOC of Belarus, and it's up now to the International Ice Hockey Federation to follow up on this. We have also been informed that they are monitoring very closely and are discussing the organization of the Ice Hockey World Championships there, even in the next couple of days and weeks. So we are expecting this result. With regard to AIBA again and the CAS case concerning Rusada. There, we have to wait for this result of the CAS case, and it was promised to come still this year. And up to this point in time, to this decision, there is no decision. So it's up to everybody to make his or her own judgment about any such candidatures.
Thank you very much, Graham. I don't think we'll go to a follow-up, seeing as you had 3 there. Let's go to our next person, Marc Van Tuyac from L'Equipe. Marc, à vous.
Vous m'entendez?
Oui, on vous entend.
Oui. Juste une précision, j'ai pas tout à fait bien compris la situation de l'athlétisme à Paris. Donc le 50 km va disparaître, 50 km marche, mais le cross-country n'a aucune chance de revenir au programme. Et pareil avec une épreuve de marche. Autrement dit, est-ce que le cross-country ne sera pas à Paris? Et comment ça va se passer maintenant pour décider d'une épreuve mixte supplémentaire?
Well, thank you very much, Mark, and I hope it's okay if I respond in English because it may be more precise.
Yes.
Thank you. No, to be clear, in regard to athletics, there's 48 events in the athletics program in Tokyo, and we aim to keep the same number. If we start with cross-country, as I mentioned, there was real interest in, and we had very detailed discussions with World Athletics regarding cross-country. We know it's a key part of their strategic plan, both to introduce cross-country into the Olympic program and also develop it around their own events. So we had very detailed discussions, but it had to fit in to an existing Olympic venue in line with the principles the president outlined, and looking at the necessary adaptations of an existing venue, for example, the equestrian eventing or the mountain bike venues. It was quite expensive and quite complex to convert one of those venues equally into an athletics cross-country venue. So the cost and complexity made it very, very difficult. So cross-country will not be included in the program for Paris, but equally we look forward to discussions with World Athletics regarding future opportunities regarding the Olympic program and cross-country. Secondly, in regard to the racewalk program, as you know, there's 3 racewalk events in the program of Tokyo 2020, the 2 20K racewalk events. Both of these will stay in the Olympic program for Paris, so we'll still have the 2 20K events, the men's and women's events. And then currently in Tokyo, we have the men's 50K racewalk as well. Now, without being able to increase the number of events, obviously we couldn't reach gender equality by adding a long women's racewalk event in addition to the existing 50K racewalk for men. Therefore, the decision was taken to reach gender equality by removing the men's 50K racewalk for Paris and having the opportunity to replace the men's 50K racewalk with a mixed gender event, and that will be discussed with World Athletics over the coming months with a deadline of the end of May 2021 to allow World Athletics to consult with its technical commissions, its athletes, everyone involved, and reach a good final position for a replacement event for the men's 50K. And that may be a mixed gender racewalk event or another mixed gender event, obviously using existing venues and existing operational plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Kit. Thank you, Mark. Let's now go to Marcus Tepper from ARD. Marcus.
Hello, good evening, Mr. President. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, but not seeing you. You are hiding.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it's radio, so no picture. Sometimes it's better not to see me. Mr. President, as we all know, this is the last session or the last event of the IOC officially this year. A personal question: what's your conclusion after this very difficult year? How do you feel after this year?
I think we cannot draw a conclusion after this year because of the coronavirus pandemic still going on. Most of the things we are doing is work in progress. And how we have addressed this, you may have seen from the numbers Mark Adams gave before that in order to address this situation, we had to have 18 executive board meetings during this year, 2 IOC sessions, and 3 additional consultations with IOC members, many more with athletes, with international federations. So I can really not draw a conclusion from this year, but to say that we are, at the end of this year, we are very much encouraged. We are very, very confident about the success of the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, knowing that we have to continue to work hard and at the same speed as we have done during the entire year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Let's go now to Tokyo, to Wakako Yuki from Yomiuri Shimbun. Wakako.
Thank you, President. Wakako from Yomiuri Shimbun. Nice to see you again. 2 questions regarding Tokyo. One is we understand that IOC waived Tokyo Organizing Committee the royalty for additional sponsorship income over the postponement. Can you share with us how you reached this decision? And also, I'll follow up on the guideline. Tokyo's interim COVID-19 countermeasure included possible testing of athletes at intervals, asking them to stay in bubble if need be. Whose responsibility that it is to issue guidelines or rules in these regard, and also possible sanctions? Is it the IOC or COC?
Okay. Thank you, Wakako. With regard to the first question, we have regular leadership conferences there with the organizing committee, and one happened shortly after my visit to Tokyo, where this request has been presented to us by President Mori and Mr. Muto, and then the IOC agreed to this request as a demonstration of our partnership with Tokyo, and as a demonstration of our joint commitment to make these Olympic Games successful. With regard to the COVID counter measures, all this is and must be a joint effort. You cannot separate the athletes from the officials, and you cannot separate Japanese volunteers in the village from other officials living in the village, for instance. So this has to be a very much coordinated effort, and this is the way how we are addressing this, and as we will continue to address this, as I have outlined before. The work of both the task force and of the coordination group of these task forces is ongoing, and you will be regularly updated about any progress being made there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go now to Inside the Games and Liam Morgan. Liam, your question, please.
Good evening, Mr. President. Hope you can hear me, and thanks for taking the time as always. 2 quick questions, if I may. Firstly, what does your decision on Belarus mean for the country's athletes and the flag, the Belarusian flag at next year's Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games? And secondly, just something on athlete protests. Where are we at with that process? And should athletes who want to protest on the podium take encouragement from the fact that Sebastian Coe gave an award to those who protested on the podium at Mexico 1968? Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. With regard to the athletes from Belarus, the decision is very clear. It does not concern the athletes and their Olympic team, at least at this moment in time. It is directed at the elected officials of the NOC Executive Board. With regard to political protests at the Olympic Games, this consultation is ongoing. You have been informed about some results already being delivered by a number of national Olympic committees, Canada, Australia, Germany, others. But the procedure is still ongoing, and we are expecting then the results after the conclusion of this very profound qualitative and quantitative research which is underway right now. And concerning the position of the president of World Athletics, Sebastian Coe, I can maybe quote the marketing and advertising rules of World Athletics as they are in force from the 23rd of November 2019. And they say in point 1.3.5, political/religious marketing. Both political, it is the promotion of any political parties, associations, movements, ideas, or any other political cause, and religious, it is the promotion of religions, movements, ideas, or other religious causes. Marketing are prohibited. I have nothing to add to this at this moment in time.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Liam. Let's now go to Australia. Tracy Holmes. Tracy, ABC, your question, please.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks very much for your time, President Bach. Sorry, it's very early. Just a bit of a follow-up, I think, to Marcus's question about COVID. When you consider all of the impacts and the trials that the Olympic movement has been through over the years that you've been involved, where would this challenge of COVID 2020 sit? And have you had any discussions with anyone in China about a potential bid for the Games in 2032?
The second question I can answer very easily, no. With regard to the first question, I think it's evident, that this pandemic is not only affecting sport and the Olympic Games, it is affecting all of us, the entire world. What, on the other hand, has also become even more evident there during this pandemic is the important role sport plays for the physical and mental health, how important sport is for the social life of all of us, and the important contribution of the economic contribution of sport to the GDPs. And we have seen this being acknowledged there most recently, first of all, by the G20 leaders, but also in the most recent UN resolution just a couple of days ago, which was passed by consensus, which is stressing this important role of sport and which is calling on all the member states to include sport into their recovery programs.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Hope it's not too early there. Let's go now to Brian Pinelli from Around the Rings. Brian, your question to the President, please.
Yes, good evening, President Bach. Nice to see you as always.
Pleasure.
In regards to the sanctions against the Belarusian NOC, just want to know what role the Belarusian Sports Solidarity Foundation played in you coming to these decisions. Obviously, they're independent athlete organization. Secondly, in regards to the athletes qualifying still for Tokyo, have initial discussions continued about what might be next steps? Might we envision these athletes competing under the IOC, under the flag? What do you think next steps will be? Thank you.
Thank you very much. There I have to refer to Mr. McLeod, who was leading this investigation and presented the results today to the Executive Board. James?
Thank you, President, and thank you, Brian. We had contacts with numerous organizations and individuals in our investigation, but as you can understand, the investigation is ongoing. It's a continuous process, so we can't give you too much comment on the actual content of what was discussed, but we were involved with a number of organizations. With regards to the IOC flag, I think the IOC president responded to that earlier in a question.
Thank you very much. We'll try and squeeze a few more questions in. We're running out of time a little bit. So let's go to Asahi Shimbun. Let's ask Hiroki Toda for your question, please.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Thank you, President. I've two follow-up questions on vaccines. And one is, have the Athlete Commission expressed their views about taking vaccines? And the second question is, given the possibility of side effects, some athletes prefer not to take vaccines. What kind of message do you want to tell those athletes? Thank you.
The Athletes Commission is fully involved in our talks with the World Health Organization in this respect, and is very supportive of these talks because they also, want to take care of the health and well-being of the athletes. To the athletes who do not want to be vaccinated, there is, first of all, the clear message. There will be no obligation to get vaccinated. At the same time, there is my clear appeal to these athletes to take also their fellow athletes into consideration, and to take the Olympic Games as such into consideration. So it's not only about themselves, it's also about the solidarity with their fellow athletes, and it's about to contribute to contribute to the safe conditions which we will offer during this postponed Olympic Games Tokyo 2020.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Nozomi Kunitake now from NHK, please.
Hello, President, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Good evening. My question is to the Paris Olympic Games, that following up question that you've mentioned that the urban sports concept has been expanded, showcasing youth-focused events that are inclusively engaged. So could you tell me more about the plan of the showcasing, that how many sports are included, and the duration, venue? What could you tell me more about it?
With pleasure, I will refer to Kit McConnell. I'm happy to see that even in the middle of the night, you're not alone in your office. Mr. McConnell.
Yes, thank you, President. Thank you, Nozomi. And yes, it's either very late or very early there, so good to hear from you. No, in terms of the expansion around the urban sport, obviously we're building on what will be a fantastic debut of the urban cluster around Iomi Odaiba. next year in Tokyo with the new sports added into the program there, and the new disciplines with basketball 3-on-3 and BMX freestyle. In regard to the increased focus on this concept as we go forward to Paris, first of all, we've kept those youth-focused events. The president mentioned the skateboarding. There we've got sport climbing as well, still on the program. In fact, with more medals than we do in Tokyo because of the 2 medals per gender that Paris proposed last year. We've kept the 3-on-3 basketball. We've kept the BMX freestyle. And in fact added breaking as the additional sport that the OCOG in Paris has proposed. So we've got a greater content around that urban cluster while again reducing the overall athlete quotas and the overall event numbers. As you've probably seen in some of the planning, Paris is really looking at making Place de la Concorde a real focus of their games, taking all of that content, all of those events, all of those athletes down to really one of the busiest and most iconic parts of the city in Paris at the foot of the Champs-Élysées there. So it's really an expansion in terms of breaking coming in, keeping those events we've already got in the program and really bringing them together in a way that's completely integrated and at the heart of Paris.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go, I think probably, yes, I'm afraid so, to our final question. And it's going to go to Alex Capstick from the BBC. Alex, do you want to ask your question, please?
Yeah, just 2 quick questions, if I may. First to Kit, just can you explain why parkour was rejected? Did it have anything to do with the complaints from the parkour community that didn't want the sport to be in the Olympics? And also to the president, breaking is going to be in Paris. You've already got skateboarding and surfing. I mean, where would you say the Olympic movement is right now in its bid to become more relevant to a younger audience?
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. If I start on parkour, yes, parkour was proposed by the International Gymnastics Federation. And again, we had some very long discussions. Obviously, as you know, parkour comes from Paris, from the streets of northern Paris, and has a really strong affinity with the city. Ultimately, the challenge came down to the consistency in applying that framework that we outlined earlier. If we face a situation where no sport can increase the number of events in that sport, the only way parkour could have been added is if it replaced existing gymnastics events. And just 4 years before Paris, and knowing the short turnaround time between Tokyo and Paris, the Gymnastics Federation chose not to propose the replacement of any of the existing events with parkour. So it wasn't a matter of us rejecting parkour. It was a matter of us thinking that parkour has a lot to add potentially to the Olympic Games in the future, but ultimately the Gymnastics Federation didn't propose parkour as a replacement for any of the existing event program. But we look forward to parkour obviously having a role in terms of the engagement program with young people around the Games in Paris, and further consideration as we look forward to future Olympic Games. Thank you.
With regard to the new sports, this is one of the results of Olympic Agenda 2020, like the reduction of the athletes' quotas, like the reference to existing venues and so on. Here we have had a clear priority, and this was to introduce sports which are in particular popular among the younger generations, and also to take into account the urbanization of sport. And therefore, we were very happy to have these proposals already from Tokyo 2020 and now from Paris 2024, because they are fully in line with these recommendations and promise to be a great success from all what we can already hear and see from athletes, but also from the federations and the wider public.
Thank you very much, President. Thank you to Kit and also to James. Many new ways of communicating, as I said at the beginning, but unfortunately one thing stays the same. We didn't unfortunately have time to get to all of your questions, so thank you very much, and sorry to those who didn't get there. I have one more thing just to tell you of one service announcement which will also be on the website. So there were 3 changes of nationality that were agreed by the Executive Board today. Ms. Alexandra Shelton in fencing from Poland to USA, and twins Madison and Michaela Corcoran in canoe from USA to Ireland. So thank you very much. I'm sure we will be in touch between now and the new year, but in the meantime, if I don't speak to you again, from all of us, have a very good new year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also from me, if we don't see each other again, have a very good and prosperous and first of all healthy new extraordinary Olympic year 2021, during which we will see successful Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. Thank you for all your interest and all the best. Happy new Olympic year. Bye.